Hi, it's Katrina. Number 10. Chateau Gaillard. It was the mighty King Richard I, also known as Richard the Lionheart, who built the magnificent Chateau Gaillard in the 12th century as a base for his war against the French. In 1194, the king returned to England from fighting in the Third Crusade. In his absence, his brother John had become greedy with power, and so Richard had to go about recovering the castles that his younger brother had taken for himself. When England learned that the king had come home, most of the castles yielded to Richard without any problems. All of them except for the soldiers garrisoned at Nottingham Castle. Richard had no choice but to take it by force. After King Richard regained his power in England, he turned his attention to France. In 1196, he built one of the most expensive castles in existence at the time. It took him only 2 years to construct the impressive fortification on the Seine River, about 59 miles from Paris. It boasted some of the most extraordinary engineering advancements of any castle in Europe. It was one of the earliest to use machicolations. Machicolations are openings on the battlement that soldiers could use to throw boiling cooking oil, hot sand, or big boulders on the enemy that gathered at the base of the defensive wall. It was a bold move building the castle in French territory while fighting France, and it did not pay off in the end. In 1204, just 6 years after the castle was finished, it was captured by King Philip II of France. Richard had essentially built the King of France a castle for free. Chateau Gaillard went on to change hands multiple times over the centuries. It was ordered to be demolished in 1599 by French King Henry IV, and it's been a ruin ever since. Number 9. El Pilar. El Pilar Archaeological Reserve in Belize is home to the ruined jungle city of El Pilar. It's right on the border of Belize and Guatemala, although when it was inhabited, the entire region belonged to the Maya Empire. This city was one of the largest of its day, although nobody really knew about it until very recently because it's so deep in the jungle. A very tiny percentage of El Pilar has been excavated by archaeologists. It was only a couple of years ago that curious researchers used light detection and ranging technology to survey the site. They were shocked to see the city covers an immense area of 125 acres. It has 25 community plazas, more than most cities in Europe. 12 Titanic Pyramids, elite household compounds where the highest members of society ruled over the peasants, and much more. Unfortunately, its isolation hasn't done the city any favors. El Pilar has been damaged by illegal loggers and looters, but now that the area is a protected archaeological reserve, it should be safe. This is important because El Pilar might just answer one of the burning questions archaeologists have about the Maya civilization. Experts have always wondered how the Maya managed to feed such a huge population, despite having no major domesticated animals, no wheels, and no beasts of burden to help transport goods from one place to another. According to Dr. Annabelle Ford from the University of North Carolina, El Pilar could be the answer. What she means is that El Pilar was a forested city. Instead of cutting the forest down and building their city on flat ground without any trees, the Maya built their city in harmony with the forest. They didn't change the jungle or destroy it. They lived with it so that the jungle could provide them all the bounty they needed. El Pilar would have been a real jungle paradise, a sustainable city that could have lasted almost forever if it hadn't been abandoned about 1,000 years ago, with the desolation of the Maya people. Number 8. Al-Ula. Al-Ula was a flourishing oasis town in the middle of the Saudi Arabian desert in the 13th century. It was a magnificent walled city with adobe structures made from mud and bricks, all squished together like a maze of squat buildings. The city was built so densely that someone could have run from one side to the other by sprinting over the rooftops. When it was originally built about 700 years ago, it was strategically located on an incense trading route going through Arabia. Because of this, the city saw quite a lot of rapid development. Travelers and merchants frequently passed through, adding to its economy and helping the residents prosper. It became such an important place that it wasn't fully abandoned until about 40 years ago. Even when the incense trading route was gone and the city was isolated in the middle of the desert, it remained a functioning town until the 1980s. The only reason people left was because they abandoned the decaying mud structures in favor of a newer town nearby. Al Ula is now a slowly crumbling ghost town. Number 7. City at the bottom of the lake. The ancient city of Southopolis in Bulgaria was found thanks to the construction of a local dam between 1948 and 1954. It was once a powerful Thracian city, but is now little more than a submerged ruin. Archaeologists were well aware this was a breakthrough discovery, but there was nothing they could do to stop the dam from being built. The whole region was flooded, and now the entire lost city is sitting about 65 feet underwater. Southopolis was the capital of the Thracian state of Odrysia in the 3rd century BC. It was likely founded by King Seuthes III as the seat for his court. What this means is that the city wasn't a large trading town filled with thousands of residents. Instead, it was more of a royal town from which the king could rule the kingdom. He would have had a palace here, and there would have been a great sanctuary dedicated to Kabeidi, the divine gods worshipped by the Thracians. You could almost think of Southopolis like Washington, D.C. Most of the space inside the city was reserved for official structures. Even the people who worked in the city and who were government officials likely lived outside in small settlements. Unfortunately for the Thracians, and for the few Greeks who lived here as well, they were besieged by the Celts in 281 BC. They had no chance as the Celtic warriors descended upon their royal court and slaughtered them in mass numbers. Southopolis was destroyed and left in ruin. And now for number 6. But first, I want to give a big shout out to Amanda Fahey and Lo Bearden. Thanks so much for watching and supporting Origins Explained. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe and join the family. We'd love to have you. Number 6. The Islands of the Dead. Not far from the modern city of San Francisco is a little-known place called the Islands of the Dead by the native Miwok people. Spanish mariners called the islands the Devil's Teeth. But today, most people refer to the 3 islands simply as the Farallon Islands. They are home to numerous seabirds and marine mammals and part of a sanctuary and protected area. However, the islands have a long history of death, human exploitation, and terror. It's unlikely anyone ever lived on the islands in ancient times, although the Native Americans certainly knew of them. It was the belief prior to Europeans arriving in the West that the islands were home to the spirits of the dead. The first European account of the islands came from explorer Sir Francis Drake in 1579. He landed on the islands to collect seal meat and bird eggs. In the early part of the 19th century, Russian settlers in New England built a sealing station on the islands and exploited the wild seals. Between 1812 and 1840, they killed about 1,500 seals a year and used their fur. By the time the Russians had abandoned their station, the seals were almost entirely gone. It wasn't until 1996 that the northern fur seal started to recolonize the islands. The ocean around the islands was used as a radioactive waste dump from between 1946 to 1970. First, the Europeans killed the native animals, then they polluted the water with massive amounts of nuclear waste. The island these days may be home to some seabirds, but it's also littered with the wreckage of Russian camps, shipwrecks, and 55-gallon steel drums. Number 5. The Inca Misana Water Temple. The Inca Misana Water Temple in Peru is a shining example of Inca engineering. The temple was built specifically for the worship of the Inca's favorite deity, the one who ruled over the water itself. The Inca were kind of obsessed with water, and many of their most impressive temples were dedicated to Viracocha, the creator of all things and lord of the sea. The temple was discovered at the ancient city of Ollantaytambo, located about 9,100 feet above sea level. This temple was so high, it would have been hidden in the clouds most of the year. This was a harsh and chilly environment, yet the Inca persevered. They didn't just live, they thrived and built monumental structures. The Inca Misana Water Temple was recently reverse engineered by researchers with the University of Virginia. They were shocked to see how the Inca utilized an advanced understanding of hydraulic principles to design water channels that created hydraulic jumps. These hydraulics fed a constant supply of water through 14 ceremonial fountains at the temple. It would have been quite the sight to behold 500 years ago before the Inca were wiped out and the temple abandoned. Number 4. Antioch and the Church of Saint Pierre. The ancient city of Antioch in Turkey is one of the most important cities in Christian history. Religious scholars believe it was in Antioch where the word Christian was first invented. The city dates back to about 300 BC and has existed through multiple empires, becoming everything from a major trade hub to a capital city. Then it began to decline in the Middle Ages. One of the most famous sites in the city is the Church of Saint Pierre, named after Jesus' disciple Saint Peter. It's one of the oldest churches in the world, built around the 4th century AD. It has been a pilgrimage site for Christians ever since it was built, going on nearly 1,600 years. Many parts of the structure are crumbling, but it still stands strong. This is partly due to the fact the church was made out of a cave on the side of a mountain, about 42 feet deep. It's still covered in marvelously preserved frescoes and mosaics from the 4th and 5th centuries. Even the water that seeps through the cave ceiling is gathered and used for holy baptisms. Number 3. 19th century homestead. Archaeologists in Maryland recently discovered a 19th century homestead. These ruins were found in the path of a proposed state highway project in Montgomery County. Julie Shablitsky and her team of trained archaeologists uncovered the shocking secrets of an enslaved woman named Melinda Jackson, who lived here with her family following her emancipation. The team first uncovered evidence of the dwelling itself, a simple cabin built on a site spanning several acres. More digging revealed an astounding 160,000 artifacts. These artifacts included everything from melted glass bottles to children's toys, and they shed light on how the family lived over 200 years ago. Researchers also found evidence the family was involved in West African spirit practices, which they used to protect their home. But the most amazing part of the unexpected archaeological site is that Julie's team tracked down the descendants of the people who once lived here. They found the living relatives of Melinda Jackson. They still live in the area. They knew nothing of the homestead and were shocked to hear of their ancestors' history. Sadly, the archaeological site won't be preserved since the highway continued through the location and destroyed it. Number 2. The Temple of the Emerald Buddha. The Temple of the Emerald Buddha is one of the most jaw-dropping places in all of Bangkok, Thailand. Inside the temple is a carved figurine of the Buddha called Pra Khao Morakot. The figurine is just over 2 feet tall and has been sitting on its pedestal inside the temple since 1784. Tourists gaze in wonder at the Emerald Buddha every single day, while locals believe it brings prosperity to Thailand. And although it's only been at the temple for almost 3 centuries, the figurine has been around a lot longer. For hundreds of years, it traveled through Sri Lanka, Cambodia, and Laos. The Buddha is believed to have protective powers, and it traveled around Asia as a kind of magic token. But when King Rama I took the throne, he moved the capital of Thailand from Ayutthaya to Bangkok. He built a special wat, or a temple, and kept the Emerald Buddha there for himself. Like many that came before him, King Rama likely believed the small figurine possessed magical abilities. The truth is that no one knows where the Emerald Buddha came from or who carved it. It's not even carved from emerald, but chiseled out of a single piece of jasper. Number 1. The City of Lelu. The city of Lelu is on Lelu Island, a tiny island in the Federated States of Micronesia. It was upon this small piece of land that tribal chiefs consolidated their power in the region around the year 1250 AD, and it was from here that the tribal chiefs ruled their kingdom in the South Pacific until missionaries arrived in the 19th century. What's truly impressive about Lelu is that it was built primarily out of coral and basalt blocks. The islanders built a complex system of walls, terraces, and even flat paved roads leading between over 20 compounds. These roads and compounds covered much of Lelu Island and extended out over an artificial bridge to an island of coral. At its peak, the island was home to about 1,500 people. They were ruled over by their high chiefs, whom they buried underneath impressive pyramids they called saru. Even though it's highly unlikely the island inhabitants ever even heard of Egypt, They copied the Egyptians' burial style. There just seems to be a deeply ingrained instinct that humans have to bury important people under pyramids. Thanks for watching! Which of these shocking archaeological sites would you love to tour for yourself? Or have you already? Let me know in the comments below. Remember to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll see you soon. Bye!